This is the all-new Brackett Show. Brackett Show. And now, here's Chris Brackett.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Brackett. This is the Brackett Show. Here we are. We're on the new set. We are on a mission. We're on a mission to reach people, and we are on a mission to answer questions and educate and do it for the kingdom and do something cool and fun and be creative and, you know, love our lives. I mean, definitely that is trying to find a new center and a new normal in this world. Losing my mom, having to redirect into other people and find that worth in my life has definitely been something I've been seeking. And it's something that we've decided to do something really cool with 321 Studios with Chris Zobeck and his wife. This is a combination of creativity and something that we feel our hearts are led to do, because there's so many questions about true purpose in life, and we have both, you know, really chased our passions, and we love our families, and here we are. I mean, this is pretty cool. This is a really very clean packaged look at what my life is about: chasing whitetails and living the land life, living the lake life, and being one with nature and a woodsman and turning properties and consulting land. It's my passion, and I've found creativity is the way to direct that path. So I want to introduce Chris. Chris is somebody that I met here around my hometown, went looking, praying for men and creative people in my life that would not only lift me up spiritually and keep me on track, because we all need men in our lives to help, you know, sharpen that iron, right? Iron sharpens iron biblically. I'm a Christian, professed. Jesus is my savior, and land is my life, wildlife, whitetails, and yeah, Chris, man, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for the new show. We want to kick things off with we're going to call the morning wake up call. So I don't know about you, I always like to start each day with a cup of coffee, which I think you do as well. And actually, we've got someone helping us out with that. You can kind of see some of it spread around. But Hunting Day Coffee is going to bring this little bit here. We're going to call the morning wake up call. So let's start things out with the first call, our wake-up call.
Yeah, so we have people calling in to our landline, which is hilarious, landline, a certain number, 309-761-LAND, and people called in, left a message, and here we go, first call.
Hey, Chris, Brandon in Indiana. Question about thermals. What exactly are thermals, and how do thermals apply to certain hunting situations? That's my question for you, and looking forward to the show. See ya.
Man, I love that. There's something. Let me just tell you, thanks to everybody that called. That's the first question. That's the first time I've got to hear it and get a reaction of a real voice asking me a question. Wow, just surreal. Thermals are important. Okay, if you don't know what a thermal is, Brandon is asking about thermals when it comes to whitetail deer mainly. Whitetail deer, probably elk, probably moose, any ungulate, four-legged animal that you're the predator and they're the prey. So when he's talking about thermals, you're really paying attention to thermals to animals that can smell you as you're the predator and they're the prey. And so when you're thinking of thermals, you're going to think about how the sun, these lights heating up the ground, what happens. This is where we should have paid attention in high school and should have paid attention to those things, how when the sun comes out, it heats up the ground, and as the water evaporates and the ground heats up, the water vapor, everything goes up, and the heat rises, right? The heat rises. So those are where you're going to determine what a thermal really is. You're going to get the heat rising. Also, the same thing happens when you shut off these lights and the sun goes under and it cools down. What happens to that cool air? That cool air sinks and that hot air lifts. So if you're on a flat playing field, let's take Indiana or Illinois, for example. We're located right here in central Illinois. And in central Illinois, you are looking at flat ground, and everything is flat where the glaciers went through, made everything flat. And then the glaciers melted and created all these channels and all these ditches that have timber and thickets in them, which is where the critters live. Everything that's flat gets planted in crops, and then as you have the ditches in Illinois that runs down and then runs down the rivers, and that's where all the critters live. So when I tell you that, I say thermals in the morning. If you can get to a place of, let's say, a peninsula out or a ridge, you're going to find me, not necessarily because of the thermals, but not because of the thermals do I try not to hunt bottoms of ditches or in the bottoms. You'll always find me at 3/4 of the way up the hill to the top. And one of the reasons is thermals, because I want to make sure on that beautiful November 11th day that it's crisp and the deer are walking through the leaves, and that you are on the top side of some type of ridge. And this will give you an example of thermals. Thermals then November 11th in Illinois, it's crisp, it's cold, and you've got the sun coming out, and you can watch the water vapors melt this frozen frost off of the leaves and off of everything. And as that happens, those thermals will rise. So sometimes when you get a real calm morning, you can really pay attention to how those thermals take your scent and will want to go a certain direction. So if you've got a 1 mile an hour wind or a no mile an hour wind or kind of this stale system, your thermals are going to dictate where your scent goes and where you can smell essentially like a campfire. Picture a campfire. In the evening, you have a campfire and you can see the smoke rolling through this campground. That means that the thermals have dropped and the temperature has dropped, and it's kept that smoky layer through a campground. And so that's how I want you to think of cold air falling being thermals. This is taking out the wind completely. And then you have I want you to think early in the morning, a crisp November morning, and the sun is heating up the leaves and the thermals are just dissipating and rising into the sky, which then carries your scent molecules and your scent particles up and out and away. And that's why a lot of early mornings in November, you can get away with sitting high. And even if the wind's not perfect, a lot of those thermals will rise and go. Now, once the world warms up, the thermals really aren't as important. You're going to see the thermals being when it gets cold and the sun goes away, your thermals are going to sink and they're going to hang out in low areas. And when it warms up, they're going to go and go into the sky. But in the middle of the day, you're not going to see as much of the thermal climb happen in the woods and in the world. And so that's kind of what the thermals do in the hunting world. And that's really what they are, is warming up and cooling down of the air, and which creates sinking when it's cold and warm when and rising when it's warm. I mean, that's thermals. Did you know that, Chris?
I did not, but I feel like I know exponentially more than I did a minute ago,
right,
or 5 minutes ago. So first off, that's our first call. That's our morning wake up call. So thank you so much for that. And then,
if we get a hold of Brandon, maybe we can send him one of my favorite bags. This is a new one. This was Limb Hanger.
Tell us a little bit about that coffee.
So, you have people come across in your life that get you places and that you're similar with, and I had a gentleman and his wife that kind of was an intern and helped me out a little bit back in the Aerofliction days, and he definitely chose, I'm going to kind of dabble in the world of outdoors, but I'm going to take care of my family. And he's a brilliant guy, and he went out and he does a lot with oil rigs, and he's a consultant. And he thought, what do I want to do in the outdoor world? He's like, man, you know what? Him and his wife just decided they're going to get in the coffee business. So they're going to make an outdoor coffee where the money stays in the industry and they do cool things with the industry. And next thing you know, they made the the Hunting Day Coffee Company, Steve and his wife. And I got a box that showed up one day that was like, dude, you need to try this coffee. And it's been the best. And it's for hunters, by hunters. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Drink coffee and shoot deer is their logo.
I thought you just said, like, at first I thought you said drink crawfish. But, I mean, that'd be its own thing. But, yes, drink coffee, shoot deer.
That's for those Cajuns down
Yeah,
there
yeah.
in
Hey,
Louisiana.
might as well. Awesome. Well, thank you to Hunting Day Coffee. Yeah, we're gonna get into a few more questions, but first, you were talking about some of this, Chris. But let's just talk a little bit about this show. There's been a little bit of a journey to where you're at now. So, what are some things that you see for the show, and how can our listeners and viewers help out?
Well, I just have always wanted to give back. Like, I've been super blessed in my, outdoor life, chasing my dream, traveling across the country, hunting. But I don't think people realize that, like, I didn't do it for my, I didn't do it mainly just because I wanted to go be famous and cool. Really, I wanted to share adventures. I wanted to go on the adventures, and I wanted to share it with people, and I wanted to share it with my mom and my dad and my sister and then my nephews, and now my wife, and then friends. And that's really how this journey started. Was like, I bought a camera, a $3,200 camera on a credit card, a GL1, Canon GL1. And I traveled across the country filming everything, and I learned how to edit, and I put it all together. This has got us on this journey of national television shows and whatever. But I've realized one thing that's come from all of it is the one thing was the creativeness that I wanted to share with the world, whether it be TV or in this format that could be audio or whatnot. And, through the outdoor television and through now a show where we can answer questions and help people. That is the mission statement of this show. You got Land Life podcasts that then, because of the fans and because of the questions of people going, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's completely dedicated to the outdoors. We have decided to have the questions dictate where the show goes, and the consumers and the clients and the people listening, they get to direct where the show goes. And that's where we're at. And they can call in right now. They can call in. I think we're gonna work on apparel. We've discussed that. We've discussed fun games, maybe. And really, there's no boundaries, because it's all about entertaining and answering questions and knowledge. So
you mentioned that people can call in. Once again, that number is 309-761-LAND or 309-761-5263. So if you call and leave a message, you might hear yourself on the show. And why don't we get into some more questions?
I love it.
We had a ton of people that had called in, some really great stuff. And Chris has not heard any of these. Also, this might get slightly confusing, especially as we go live, because my name is Chris and your name is Chris. You're Brackett. I'm Zobak. I feel like the names are so close that it might get confusing. But if you just say Chris 9 times out of 10, because I think that, like, some of these people who called in are Chris too. It's everyone's
fun.
Chris. Everyone's Chris.
I just love this. I love true people's passion to call in and ask questions. I mean, my favorite part about my job going on consults is to get the questions all year and be the coach. It's one of my greatest passions. I think it came with the white hair and the white beard, right? A little bit of wisdom, a little bit of older Chris Brackett.
Well, let's share a little bit of that wisdom. Here's another question.
This is Chris from Wisconsin.
See, another Chris.
I had hired Chris for a consult earlier in the year. It was outstanding. I've had kind of a first world problem in the deer hunting world. I consistently have been able to kill a big buck for quite a few years.
Oh, he's got a great place
have a
up
pretty
there.
good track record, and I thought a pretty good program. And I hired Chris just for a second opinion to try to take it to the next level. And Chris did a great job teaching me that I was like a really good hunter hunting the X, and he can explain that. But he taught me more about accessing my property and setting it up differently. to having the even better experience, and I've done all that work. Spent a lot of time, a lot of money, changing roads, plots, got it all set up. I'm excited. My question is, I set everything up the way Chris wanted, and now I have, it seems like, twice as many deer on my property, which is a good problem, but I feel like I have too many deer because I'm drawing them from everywhere and all the neighbors. The question would be, should we shoot more does? What's his thoughts on, should the population be down, like less deer, bigger bucks, or is it have as many does as possible, and if you have as many does as possible, will the big bucks be there during the rut, and that's just as good or better? So I'm wondering about the population size and his thoughts. I sat in my field the other night that we set up and talked about, and if I would have done that this year last time, I would have had 15 deer out there. I sat out there the other night and there was 45 deer. So that's the question, is lower population, does it equal bigger bucks or not? Or should we kill more does or just leave it as is, and the more the better?
I love it. I love it. So Chris is a client from Wisconsin. I had the greatest time up there. I learned what an old fashioned was, and I got to walk a lot of the hills and rode a lot of the hills. You know, this is kind of the age-old question where a lot of theories come in. You hear Don Higgins, you hear podcasters talk about it. We've had this conversation with the Hunter podcast guys. This is a big topic about what you think. Should it be a doe factory, essentially, or is there something more complex going on? My answer would be there's a lot more to this than a one-part answer. So this property was a property that is going to hold a lot more deer than just a flat piece of ground. So if you take 100 acres in Illinois or in Indiana where you're a lot flatter, you go to Wisconsin, they have all these nooks and crannies and little ditches and the thickness of the timber. I truly believe that you can hold more deer on these hilly ground and up these draws, right? First off, they can hold the deer. Number two, when you start learning what the question that Brandon asked about the thermals, you all of a sudden start realizing if I can shield myself from these deer on this hillside or up this draw at the end of this draw up where they have these fields, and those deer will use that, you can hold a lot more deer. And the goal for me when I come to a property is to look at what the landowner has. And in this case, Chris had an exceptional property, had already been executing his way of style of hunting, which was get on the X. The problem I saw and was immediately putting attention to was, how do we put the X's on the map of where you're already hunting and where the deer want to go and where the bigger deer want to go, and then how you've killed and what you've done, the intel of the property over the years. And then what I do is I figure out, okay, the weather's going to come in from the west, the weather's going to come in from the northwest, the southwest, and when it's east, I'm going to try not to hunt. How do we use those thermals in that hilly area of at the top of the hills and at the bottom? So his food is mainly in the bottoms. So what we tried to do was we tried to create access points from the eastern side with the wind blowing from the west, using the thermals in the evening to come down and kind of try to use the wind to push the thermals out the back and then be able to access, and try not to put our boots on the ground in where the deer are, using more like what I was teaching the hunter guys, podcast guys, which is like, that's the deer zone, that's theirs, we'll let them do, and then we'll be over here, red and kind of a blue area. And then you kind of hunt them on this border. So we've taken the access and changed the access to the property. which has taken the pressure off the deer, which has increased the number of deer that are using the property, but it also has made it more of like a nursery. You're listening to these fawns calling for their moms and feeding right now, and you've got the little bucks out there sparring, and you've got the 2 and 3 year olds probably out there sparring and hitting these scrapes along the side of these fields. You've taken off the pressure. The deer have increased. You've started paying attention to the bigger fields and what's going on. What's going to happen with the doe population? In my opinion, on year 1, I'm going to try to feed them. I'm going to try to feed them on year 2. And what that means is as much food as humanly possible while I'm planting my miscanthus and my switchgrass and studying how many deer enter the field, where they enter, and then where they're flowing. So in year 1 and year 2, Chris, my answer would be study deer, enjoy the deer, enjoy learning where they want to enter the field and exit the field. I'm going to pay attention to that flow for many seasons to come and watch that even in the off season. I want those deer to come out of certain places and I want them to go to certain places. And if they're not doing what I want, maybe I'm going to take a lesson from them of where they come from and where they go and where they come from and then where they go back to bed. And I'm going to pay attention for a year or 2. I'm also going to stack the odds in my favor that I'm going to put the right fawns and the new fawns in, and then I'm going to get to a place where in year 2 or 3, once you've dictated who are your home girls, your home bodies, the people that like to stay on your property and not leave, those are the ones I want because I know what they're doing. The minute they start acting a fool or maybe know where your locations are from, the other way of hunting years, those are when I'm going to be selective of taking out those does. I'm going to want to take those does out that know where I'm at in that tree, where I'm at in that blind. Those does that have figured it all out. Maybe they've had too much stimuli in that a predator's chasing them. That's when I'm going to take out the does. But I'm not going to dictate how many does I got to take off a property yet, because you're in year 1 of the Land Life Game Changers Chris Brackett plan, which is I feed them, make them comfortable, feed them, selectively take out these bigger deer. And then in year 3 and year 4, then I'm going to know. Later in the year, I've got all the does. I'm already tagged out with my bucks. I'm going to go ahead and take X amount number of does. And so that's it. I think you're early in the game. I think you just wait. I think you just pay attention and you enjoy our dreams. Go back to when we were 12 and 13 and 14 years old, dreaming of watching deer on our own property. And they're first class problems. When you own land and you're able to get it set up correctly and set up to where you can enjoy things that other people don't get to see in the world. You're living good, you're blessed, enjoy it, enjoy those deer for the next couple of years, then make decisions after that. I think that's where you're at. The main thing is get the herd healthy, get the herd fed, and then dictate from there how many you take. I don't think any property is the same as long as you just get the herd healthy and then make decisions. So that's a good question.
Hi, my name is Kerry, and I'm from eastern Iowa. I'm fortunate enough to hunt some real nice land.
Iowa, baby.
They're small wood lots. Just curious your thoughts on mature does and mature buck ratios.
Yep.
Like the more mature does, the more mature bucks, or what's your thoughts on having more mature does around?
Well, I think we're gonna see this trend. Go through all the states. Eastern Iowa, man. Eastern Iowa is close to Illinois. A lot of patchy stuff. You've got the river bluffs there off the Mississippi. A little different than the southern part of the state, where you have the big farms and you have big deer numbers. Up northern Iowa, you don't have as big a deer number, so he's kind of on the eastern side of Iowa. My guess is this side of Des Moines. I think the question comes back to doe populations. You've got two things here. You got one where the state and the biologists are dictating, and Iowa does an amazing job, and they're going to allow doe harvests where you get to donate to the Hush program, where you're donating does. Mine comes down to each farm individually with doe numbers, buck numbers, mature bucks, mature does. I kind of play to a different set of rules when I come to managing a whitetail population. One, if it's a small property, I'm going to make sure that property has enough food to support the animals it has on it. That's going to be number one for me. So I'm going to look at, for every 65 to 100 acres, I want 3 acres of standing crops that are hard crops, soybeans and corn, and I want to leave them to at least March to make sure the deer have what they need on that property. And I'm going to take inventory with cameras and visual sightings of what's going on and how many deer are using that. I'm going to take mental note of how many animals are 4 years old or older. I'm going to take a mental note and even write it down that's 6 years old and older, how many does I have and what those does are having for fawns. Because in late season or in early season, you're going to see the mature does are going to have not only their this year's fawns, are they having single fawns, twins, triplets, and do they have their fawns from last year in these doe groups, and then dictate from there. So I think the question is, make sure you have your structure with food and security, and then for you to say my goal is more mature bucks, you're going to have to take a left turn or a right turn and say, I want to have a doe factory and enjoy a ton of deer. And if I have all the girls, at the party, the bucks are going to come join in the rut, but I may lose them late season because they don't like the commotion. Early season, they don't like the commotion of a bunch of kids and girls doing what kids and moms do. And I think that's what it's going to come down to dictating. For me, I am as many deer as possible, throw as big a party as you can for the whitetails, feed them as much as you can, and then I get very strategic with how many sanctuaries I can create with diversity. So on my 100 acres, I have 16 acres of food, and the rest of it is timber and switchgrass, and the rest of it is areas that a big mature buck can get away from the group. And then I have other areas that's closer to the food where all the does, all the fawns, and then the last year fawns all hang out. And then you can kind of dictate which left or right you want to take as far as numbers of deer you want to feed and can afford to feed. And number 2 being, are they getting too wise to you? That's the mature does. If the does are getting too wise to you, you just got to take them out. They smell the rat. They know something's wrong. So you can take out those mature does when they start figuring out, when they look up in the tree and they do get you or they cut your footprint, do they freak out or do they relax and go about their business? My does really are pretty chill. They'll allow me to get away with a lot. And that comes from the stress level of your farm. If these deer are stressed and they pin you in the tree, you're going to want to take out those mature does, in my opinion. So I try to make them all my friend, Chris. All the big does, I try to make them my friend. Give them everything they want.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a good friend, right? You could provide some coffee for them. Maybe.
Would you like some clover?
Yeah.
Well, would you like some corn, some soybeans? Here's some grass for you to bed in.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, whatever it takes.
I just try to friend them up. And when they're not my friend, they go in the freezer.
I got a few more questions, and once again, thankful for everyone who called, because we had just a great response. And so if we can't get to your question today in this episode, we'll try to get to it the next time. But once again, the number is 309-761-LAND. That's 309-761-5263. All right, here we go. You ready for another question?
I love it.
Here we go.
Hi, this is Ryan from Atwood, Illinois. I am a public land hunter, and what tips would you suggest for areas to look for to hunt? And how are you doing with the loss of your mom? I lost my dad in June of this year, and it's really tough.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. I'm grieving with you. My friend. I fall on the Lord. I fall on what He says. I was fortunate enough through everything that happened kind of in my life that if the things wouldn't have transpired, I would have never been able to love on my mom and lead her to Christ. And so I rest assured that I will see her again and that this isn't my home. And I really appreciate you checking on me. That means a lot, and I grieve with you. Public hunting is it's almost its own book. I think that it has changed in 20 years. And I think he's just kind of, Chris, isn't he just looking kind of for a general how to go kind of about? Or do you think that he didn't ask about a certain big buck, right? Like,
no,
how do
I
I
don't
get a
think
big
so.
buck?
I think you're fortunate that you have the property that you do. Some of the other callers have talked about how they've developed land. But I
started out public though, so like I get it. I got this answer for this.
Yeah, so let's share a little bit about that. I mean, what was kind of your experience certainly early on, and do you even hunt public land now sometimes?
I don't hunt public land now. My goal my whole life was not to have to hunt public, right?
Sure.
And so now my job is to be an Illinois broker and teach people how they can afford their own land one day, because it is possible. But in this case, my guy's in Illinois, so we have a lot of good state areas. Some of the places you can't hunt till after 2:00 after the duck hunting's done in November. I think if I was going to look at a general question about public ground in Illinois, and what I would look at is I use a lot of apps out there. I guess there are a lot of apps. I use Onyx, ONX hunts. That's an app out there, and I think I've always used that. And when I look at that, I'm going to go in, and they've got a feature where I can turn on the hybrid, which will show me. And I think this leads me to the first answer to this question, which is learn how to read a map and the topography. I think I overlooked little things like that. So when I'm looking at Onyx and I'm looking at it on my computer, or if I'm looking at it on my phone, I turn on the hybrid, and the hybrid will show you, field and all the graphics, but then it will also show you the 10-foot changes in elevation. And if you learn how to kind of just generally learn the topography and read the terrain, that's going to start leading you to your typical things like, okay, if there's a real deep ditch on public ground or in general, those deer are going to be creatures of laziness, and they are going to try to get to the head of that or the bottom of a big ditch. And if you look on the topography on the app or on a map, it will show you the closer the little orange lines are to one another, the steeper the terrain. That's the biggest part I'm going to look at. And I'm probably going to give you one of my secrets here. When I look at a map, whether it be doing the consults where I go boots on the ground, or whether I dive into on my own land, I'm going to look for... There's normally one line, and if I ever worked with Onyx or created my own kind of layer to this app, you are going to find on a map that there is this, whatever this top line is, Are you following me? Like if I'm explaining it to you and you've never looked at this map, the top line, which is the top of the hill, normally 3/4 from the top is you'll find this orange line, and it's a little more pronounced than the other lines. And that line kind of shows you where those deer, no matter what, are going to walk, whether that is in Texas, whether that is in Canada, whether that is in Illinois. You're going to find this similar line that you're going to find all the scrapes on, that you're going to find all the rubs on, and you're going to find this line that seems to be not at the top of the ridge, not in the middle of like the ridge going to the bottoms, but you're going to find this 3/4 traveled line towards the top that you're going to be able to traverse the entire state area and look on that lateral line, and most of your deer or buck sign is going to be on that lateral line. You can't beat the deer in the bottoms. Stay out of the bottoms. You can beat the deer on the top using your thermals and staying on the top and being able to key in, but you don't want to go through any further past 3/4, that top quarter of that topography, right? So I would say get a map, get your Onyx maps, look at that, know that your winds are going to come out of the west. If you can access with a south wind on the top and use that, you're going to want to play the wind, which is always when you get these fronts moving in. Once the front gets here, it's going to come out of the west. So always be playing that wind to the west. And that means that wind's going to come out of the west, be walking into the wind. And one of probably the greatest tricks to public land is wait for a downpour when it's raining. A good October rain at the end of like October 16th through the 26th or Halloween. Jeans, whatever I can wear, whatever I can slip around, I am walking all of the public ground, and I am slipping with the wind in my face, very slow, paying attention. And the first thing is I'm going to look at it from the 30,000 foot view, and I'm going to look at it for the long play. And hunting public ground is a matter of knowing the ground, knowing where it's easy to get to for other hunters, and then being able to figure out, do I want to hunt downwind a couple hundred yards from those hunters, or do I want to go ahead and go in deeper? Me, I'm going to look at that rain, I'm going to creep around, I'm going to find the sign, and then I'm going to back off of the sign downwind on the eastern side, and I'm going to use those bowl pinches, those little pinches where that big ditch in Illinois is running down to that creek, and those deer have to go to the top of it or to the bottom of it, and it's easier to kill them on the top. So if you're looking at a rut stand, you're going to want to be at the top on the eastern side of one of these. They call them deer funnels, right? But it's a complicated answer, but the main thing is learn your maps, and then learn the topography, and then look for the things that have to pinch the deer down. And then you just got to pay attention to the wind. 99% of the hunters out there just don't really truly understand the one, thermals. Number two, thermals don't play a lot into my hunts. Once the wind is past 5 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour is going to trump any thermal. So throw the thermal out the window, play the wind coming out of the west, and then how you can access around the other hunters. Either be really early getting in, like 3-4 in the morning, and getting to your spot, letting the other hunters kind of push the deer to you. And one of my big secrets was always to find the cattails, or what we call shattercane or phragmites around these water areas, around the ponds or low. Every time I'm on public ground, all of those bigger deer are around those phragmites, those cattails, because they're so unpredictable, and they're in these bottom swampy areas, and a lot of hunters just aren't going to traverse through that. Look for water access. If you can use a river or a lake to canoe in to get to places that other people can't get to by walking, by their footprints, then you've got them beat. So that's kind of my public kind of breakdown real quick. And I appreciate you. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. This new project this is what my mom would want. She was a teacher for 38 years, so she wanted me teaching people. So that's why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to help folks. And thank you very much.
We're testing out some new things, right? This is a new show.
Yeah.
So first off, want to make sure that we know what you think. So you can feel free to also call in and let us know what you think. You can leave a message as well. We're going to be posting this stuff on YouTube and other podcast platforms. So leave a comment. Let us know what you think of this. But we're trying out some different segments. So we're going to try this real quick. A segment that I'm calling "Would You Rather." All right. So, okay, I got a question for you. So, it doesn't have to be a long answer, but would you rather tag a deer on the first day of the season, or spend weeks tracking down a deer?
Okay, so I'm gonna tweak the question into my dream buck for that year, right?
Okay, sure, yeah.
Let's call him Big Louie. Would I rather tag out the first day of the season on Big Louie, or have a long hunt, like 100-day hunt, right?
Yeah,
and hunt all the 100. I'm going to shoot them on the first day if I get the opportunity. I can always take you and teach you how to hunt, right? I'm going to find that silver lining, but if I get that opportunity at that big deer and that deer makes my heart pump and he fires me up and my adrenaline's ripping, I'm going to put an arrow through him.
All right. So you're not going to wait.
One,
yeah.
I'm not going to wait because I know how much other life is out there, right? And I think we get stuck in that. Would we rather? I would rather have that big opportunity and then find some other juice in the squeeze for other parts and make myself grow and find other cool things to do with the rest of my season and be blessed.
Yeah. I got one other would you rather question that we'll try out here. So, would you rather get to sleep all day or have a day that's exhausting but you accomplish a lot?
Oh, man. I always pick the one with the hard work. I just feel more at peace. And if I don't do the hard work, I'll never sleep at night anyway. So I wish I could go back to when I was 20 years old and you could just sleep for hours. You remember those days?
Oh, man. I don't know if I ever quite
before
did
you
that,
had kids.
Yeah.
Before you had kids.
I was on the road before I had kids, so I don't know, man.
True.
But I'm sure somebody out there used to sleep.
Man, I remember having a day off and like just sleeping all day and watching movies with my Uncle Duke I still try to have those days where I could do that every once in a while. I used to call them like small deaths. I would be on the road like you and travel all over, and I'd come back and I'd spend a whole day just out. I still think it's one of the most peaceful things that God wants us to do is have rest, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's a fleeting thing that I think we all chase is true rest, right? So since you're not really a hunter, this is one that just cracks me up. And I don't even know if I've ever talked about this with anybody, but I see so many people on social media, because social media is everything, right? So I watch all these hunters. I cannot believe how many hunters are scared of the dark. I wish we could find a statistic, or maybe we could one day put it on our website or figure out the statistic. But I am blown away by the majority of people that deer hunt or just hunt in general, but I would probably take it back to deer hunting. When they get to their spot early in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning, before the sun comes up, to walk into the woods, you would not believe how many people are scared of the dark. Giant grown aggro males.
Now, when you say scared of the dark, okay, like what do you mean? Like you gotta take a nightlight with you. You gotta take a little lovey stuffed animal, little stuffed deer. Make sure you feel comfortable. What do you mean scared of the dark?
I'm deep in this thought. So I have never had a conscious thought where I went, I'm scared of the dark. Like I'm walking into a dark basement, walking into a woods I've never been in. So okay. So let me back up. If you hang your tree stands at the beginning of the year, you put these little night tacks, like these reflective night tacks and these, these ribbons, and you park your truck, and then you have these trails cut in to get to your stand. But it might be a half-mile walk. It might be 300 yards to your tree. Okay, that's pretty standard. You've got Pennsylvania, you've got, like 1 million hunters in Pennsylvania. You've got all these states, all these places. And I have never had a conscious thought ever of being scared to flip on that flashlight, get my gear on. I mean, I've got a weapon, first off, and I've at least got a knife and a bow or a gun, and I'm walking through the woods in the middle of the night with a flashlight, and never one time thought about, oh, well, boogeyman might get me, a snake might get me, a bear might get me, a cougar might get me. Never one time. So am I just touched in the head, or this is evidently more common that I see this topic on social media, and I just have never thought about it, and I laugh because of how many people are telling me or just have this topic on these reels that they're scared of the dark hunting, and I just find it completely hilarious.
Yeah, you touched on the fact that I'm not a hunter, but with that being said, yeah, I don't know. The whole scared of the dark thing, you make a good point about carrying a weapon while you're out there. So it's not like I don't know. I don't know what to tell people. Maybe we need to make some fear no evil flashlights or something.
I think
so they're not afraid anymore.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yes.
Right. And
I illuminate it with a flashlight. Yeah.
I think maybe we go on the social media, and I'm gonna put out a, hey,
are you afraid of the dark?
Are you afraid to go into the dark, to go into your stand in the dark? Yeah. And then, I would love to know the percentage of people. And if you're around, if you guys are listening to this, ask your buddies, have a fun conversation about this, because I'm a little disturbed at the number of people that are absolutely terrified to go into the dark. They have these screech owls, and like this screech owl let out this giant screech or whatever, and it's like, oh, it's a bobcat. Oh my God, this coyote's going to get me. People are absolutely terrified. And I have never even had this thought in my conscious brain. So maybe we just need to get comments on Facebook and comments on YouTube
now,
underneath this.
Keep in mind, we're not judging you, even though Chris just said he's
I'm judging.
Okay. I'm not judging you. So if you want to share whether or not you're afraid, I will not judge you. Now, Chris will publicly shame you, but don't worry, because I will not be judging you. I am also not afraid of the dark, so I don't know, maybe not. But that's a good question. Maybe we'll put it out there.
It's been stuck in my head for a month. I just can't get over it. I want to know more information. Talk to me, people, about this new information. Leave us a message if you have
Please
to.
Talk to us.
And tell us. Call the landline. Leave us a message. What do you think about being scared of the dark? If you are scared of the dark, tell me a story why you're so scared of the dark.
That's good. Once again, what's that number?
That number is 309-761-LAND.
That's right. 309-761-5263. All right, you want to get back into some questions?
I love it.
All right, here we go.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Port Royal, Pennsylvania. My question is, with approximately 10 to 11 acres of land,
okay,
half wooded, half fields, what would be the best crops and techniques for the landscape to hold deer, mature deer, bucks? I
love it.
Sums it up. Thank you.
I love it, man. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you. Pennsylvania is a tough one because you guys got a lot of rocks, but I got an easy one for you, okay? Got an easy one for you, and it'll lead us into a little sponsor spot here. So the easiest way to create flow on your property, even a small property, 10 to 12 acres is all. I would pick, on 10 to 12 acres, I feel like Trump here with this thing going on. Listen, here we go. Okay. I would pick your two trees that you feel that predominant wind is there. If on 10 or 12 acres, you can get some type of smoke bomb or go out there and kind of build a campfire or a little fire, watch the thermals Watch the wind, the predominant wind, how the wind comes up. That 10 or 12 acres may be in the bottom. That 10 or 12 acres may be on the top of a ridge. Both of them are going to vary and differ with how the wind kind of comes through there, if that makes sense. Topography is a big deal. So your access is going to be a big thing. So we're going to try to limit the amount of human intrusion on the property, right? So we're going to either pick what we want to associate with as a blind or a tree stand. We're going to get those, and then we're going to try to leave the rest of that alone. That's going to be number one. Cut down on the human intrusion on 10 or 12 acres. I'm going to find two locations on that. Like I said, blind or stand, and we're going to use the same trail to go in and out. If we can clear an area, or we have an area that is field and or food plot-ish kind of thing, this is going to be my recommendation. If you haven't done anything yet to that ground or that grass or that area for that food plot, pick the best place that you can hide. Pick the tree. Mark Drury used to teach, pick the tree first, plant around the tree or the blind. So that's what I want you to first figure out, how that wind's going to come, set up your ambush point, and then we're going to figure out the best way for you to plant. If you don't have the equipment, this is the greatest tip right now. The greatest thing that you could do, if you're listening to this right now in September, starting in October, you're going to have a period of time where winter wheat and winter rye are going to germinate and grow down to about 35 degrees. And so you have time, if it's rainy, to do a no-till throw and grow type plot. Now listen to me here. Don't go buy the garbage out there of throw and grow in a package. I want you to go either get winter wheat, winter rye, or mix both of them together. That's number one. They come in 50-pound bags. All right. We are then going to spread out 100 pounds to the acre. So if you've got a 50-pound bag, you're going to do a half an acre, right? And you're just going to spread it down where you can see the seed everywhere. And then I want you to take a lawnmower. I don't need you to kill off the grass. I don't need you to kill off the weeds. What I need you to do is throw all the grain down, all the wheat and all the rye down, and then I need you to mow it. Use your lawnmower if you got to. Use your tractor. Mow it tight to the ground. All that stuff's going to cover that. It's going to come up. You're going to create deer food. That's the easiest way to do a makeshift fast food plot right now in end of September and October. Last minute stuff. This is going to grow into the spring. It's going to stay. Some of this winter wheat's going to stay alive into the spring. Then what I want you to do is this winter buy a really good quality clover. This is Clover Rush from White Gold. They have been supporting everything that I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. There's still there's incredible friendship there. This is White Gold Clover Rush. I've got some of my switchgrass that they make Fort Knox behind me. So between the switchgrass and between the clover, and there is an alfalfa mix that's called a little Gold Strike back there. I'm going to take Clover Rush and Gold Strike this March on the area that I prepared, that I put the rye and the wheat down in, and I'm going to put one of these bags, 10 pounds to the acre. You can't overdo it. So you 15, 20 pounds to the acre. I'm going to put down the Clover Rush mix right on to the snow, onto the frozen ground in March. I'm going to put this right there in there. Then what's going to happen is that clover is going to germinate when it hits about 50 degrees and there's wet snow, melty, freeze thaw. It's called frost seeding. And then next thing you know, you're going to see these little clovers come up. Now your weeds and your grasses are going to continue to grow. Now all I want you to do is use your mower. Everybody has a mower, and mow that grass. I want you to keep mowing that grass till May, till June, and then give it an old spray with a with a hand sprayer or with a 4-wheeler sprayer, and you're going to spray 5 ounces of IMOX onto the frost-seeded clover. You don't need a tractor, you don't need a disc, and that's what you're going to do. And that's going to kill everything except for your clover. Your clover is going to continue to grow. If you maintain it with IMOX and mowing, you're going to have a clover, an incredible clover blend. This is a perennial blend with giant clovers in it. You're going to have those for the next 6 to 7 years if you control them with 5 ounces of IMOX per acre. Normally is about 21 gallons, 20 gallons of water to 5 ounces of IMOX. Spray it. And that is the easiest way to create a huntable situation that you can control with a perennial plot. That is the easiest way that I can say 10 to 12 acres. I'm going to be looking at 1 plot or 2 little micro plots with 2 little places that every time you get that west wind or every time you get that north or that south wind, you're going to be able to go to that spot with that food. And that's really as simple as you can make it. I'm going to dictate that, I'm going to dictate the where this is where I sit. This is where the deer are, and I'm not going to enter their area, and they're not going to get behind me with the wind. I'm going to try to do that over and over. Every 10 or 12 acres that I have, I'm going to create those little traps, and I'm just going to enjoy those deer. Keep the human intrusion off their area. Let them have a little area that's theirs. Then come out to the food, and you guys kind of share that area. Your bow or your gun's going to cut down that distance for you. So that's kind of my 10 to 12 acre kind of breakdown that you're going to want to do. That gives you a food plot without any heavy machinery, really. So thanks, Josh, for the call from Pennsylvania.
For those who have listened to the podcast before, hope you've been enjoying this episode. I want to remind you, you can actually watch all of this on YouTube. So I would suggest that you check that out, and also out on Spotify too. So if you want to see what he's talking about, see the bag of white gold, see the coffee, see
the visuals.
Yeah, if you want to see all that stuff, see his beautiful face, then I would encourage you to check that out. We're excited to be able to share that. We got a few more questions before we wrap things up. Here we go.
A face only a mother would love.
Hey, Chris, Nate from Central Illinois. What tips and tactics do you have for folks that hunt river bottom ground? It's my experience that properties can hold resident deer with the appropriate habitat, but also has a transient aspect of it with deer traveling through during the entire season and often has challenges of swirling winds. Second question. As many of us have younger kids that look to engage in the hunting tradition with their fathers, what guidance can you give for introducing youth to the sport and tips for a successful youth hunt?
Man, 2 great questions. I have personally myself owned river bottom property and hunted river bottom property my whole life. It's a tough question to kind of answer. It's wide open, right? It's so wide open with these silver maples and the deer. I feel like the deer can see you. I'm trying to work out how I explain this. The deer can see you a long ways in river bottom properties. I have found my best strategies is to go back to that topography I was talking about early in the show. If I can find these little rises, I know that those little rises are not going to be underwater as much as the lower stuff. So I'm going to key in on a location, whether that's 20 acres or 100 acres. I think what I'll do is I'll kind of take my rainy day situation, right? When I get a rainy day, I'm going to use that as a time that I can kind of muddy the water in the mud puddle. And then I'll wait for it to kind of, anytime that you have a cornfield picked or a soybean field picked or a big event like water or snow, it is a changing of the guards, a disturbance in the surroundings and the habitat that the whitetail deer live in and that we live in. And so I'm going to take some type of active thing, whether that is early in the season, whether before the season or after the season. I'm going to walk through on a pouring rainy day, and I'm going to find those locations that sit a little bit higher than the surrounding area. And every place has it. And they're just these little, there's just these little areas that don't get flooded as much. It takes a little more for flooding to happen to get on these little rises. And I'm talking about 5 foot. If you can find those 5 foot little rises, you can go on like on Onyx Maps or Smart Scouter or some app, and you can walk through there and you can put an X or draw a little area on those little rises in the river bottoms. And if you can find those little rises, you'll 9 times out of 10 find buck sign or just a lot of deer sign that the deer are spending a little more time. And here's why. When the water comes up and stays for a long period of time in that 2 foot flood stage, when we get a lot of rain, 2 to 5 foot flood stage, it kills all the vegetation. Then you have this stuff that's 6-7 foot taller, just a little rise coming off the mainland, might be an island. Normally they'll have more willow trees. Normally they'll have more like little browse bushes, things that didn't get drowned out by the increasing floodwaters that come and go. And you're going to start honing in on little areas that hold deer and hold more of a change in cover, vegetation cover, bushes, willows, might have an oak tree on it, a pin oak or something like that, might have something, different kind of trees on it than these silver maples that are in the river bottoms. So I'm going to try to find as many of those. I don't mind bumping the deer during the rain. If I can find more of those and I can mark them, then I can go back home, get on my computer and find where there's a bunch of them in an area, or I can kind of figure out where that area is. And then I'm going to know, okay, well, if that buck is there, he's going to lock a doe up in that thicket. Or if he is cruising through that area, he's going to lock down in that little rise area that has better vegetation. It's all about cover for me and topography in finding and marking and remembering the long play of where those areas are, because that deer doesn't go where you think he does all the time. And that's where I forget what word he used, but he was talking about the transient deer, which means the moving deer. Illinois in particular is known for, or Mississippi on the river down in Mississippi and down south, is these deer that are river bottom deer. These deer go a long distance. When the water comes up, they go up on the bluff. After the water comes down, they come down from the bluff. You get exchanges of different deer, different genetics. And these deer will just get on these open river bottoms that they can see for 200 yards. And they can just walk and walk and walk. And I think when you really find those little rises, and then you can establish where some scrapes are, what I have found is that the scrape lines and the hubs with a 1 or 2 foot topography change is all it's going to take to figure out river bottoms and how the deer flow through it. Whether they're swimming the river to go to the other side or coming back from safety, you're going to see that in Montana, that you can bring that strategy back to Illinois, to where you may think, well, these deer aren't going to swim that river. Those deer 100% don't reason like you and I. They're swimming that river to get to that cornfield. They're swimming that river to get to those oaks on the other side. After dark, they're in people's backyards. They're swimming the river back, and then they're going to come through this open area. They're going to hang out, and then they're going to find the oaks, and they're going to find these little thicket areas with the topography change. And so that's my tactic with it when it comes to that. And if I'm dealing with thermals or winds, where the water's flowing down, I use that a lot of times. If I can get on closer to that water's edge, anytime that you have moving energy with that water coming from, let's say, north to south, and that water's always flowing, that water is always pulling downstream the scent molecules and the air. also comes back to thermals. It's sucking the cool air next to the water down, and if you can bring your scent that falls and gets down there, it'll go out with the river. Number 2 question with the kids. The greatest way that I can get kids going and hunting is if you get them addicted to shooting. And that's where Arrowfliction was born, and how it excelled was if you can get them into shooting, whether it's a crossbow or whether it's a Red Ryder, you want to blow up 1 million balloons and put them everywhere and get them shooting, because at the end of the day, if they can get their shooting out, then there's something about being outdoors and then them having the confidence that when they do go hunting, they don't have to shoot something every time because they got to shoot with their dad or their father figure or their mom or whoever it is in their yard. To me, it's more of a big picture think where if you get them shooting and you get them shooting moving things like, clay pigeons might be too fast, but you can go to a balloon store. You can like a craft store and buy little tanks of helium for $100 with balloons, and you can let those balloons go and off into the wind and get them shooting, trying to pop that thing with a pellet gun, trying to get them to shoot this moving balloon with a pellet gun, with a shotgun, to go get balloons and to go have that Arrowfliction feel at the challenges. Get those challenges, get those shooting, and the hunting comes second. There ain't nothing better than knowing that you've tagged out on a buck or after gun season to go take a bunch of kids squirrel hunting. I've never seen anybody have more fun than a 12-year-old that doesn't really hunt. He goes and sits in the blind, he hunts, he does all this stuff, but to go take him and he shoots a squirrel running down a limb because he's been practicing at aerial targets. Those sporting clays or trap might be too much for them, but a big giant balloon and then keep getting smaller with healing them and letting them go. That fun stuff, taking them to go hunt bullfrogs or to go hunt rabbits, start out on small game just like we all did. That's the key to the game. The key to the game is to get them started on the small stuff and just make it fun. Take their friends with them. It doesn't have to be hunting big bucks like us. It doesn't have to be like this big, hooved, furry, doe-eyed animal. Get them hunting small stuff. Take them dove hunting. Help them find the doves out there. You got to make it fun. It's got to be about fun. It's got to be about fun, right? I mean, I think that's it. I think that's it with the kids is Arrowfliction style. Make it fun.
For a lot of people, we're about to enter a really exciting time. So, Chris, why don't you give us the lowdown here? Yeah.
So with this little segment, the lowdown, the breakdown of what the year is going to look like is brought to you by Lowdown. It's a high-speed trail camera viewer. This is the unit right here. It looks like a little tablet. It opens up. It's 4K. It's awesome. I use it to where I'm able to go into my property, stick an SD card in, and have a bigger SD card that's got a ton of storage on it where I don't have to carry around 40 different SD cards. I can just grab it out of the camera, throw it in a day and age where I use cell cameras, but I also use non-cell cameras that are still using an SD card. This is the only way to go for me. I can throw it in my side-by-side or my truck, but check them out. They're out of Wisconsin. Lowdown. It just doesn't get any cooler than that. And this is the lowdown on the prediction this year. It's probably, one of the most anticipated times of the year for everyone. And they want a breakdown of when to take off work and when to get excited and when to, stay at home or take their wives on date night, So I think without further ado, the lowdown is I'm going to be really excited for opening day, October 1st in Illinois and in most of the country for bow season. I'm going to be ready to rock and roll. I'm going to go by my number one rule, which is October. I'm not hunting in the morning, period. Doesn't matter if a big buck shows up. I'm not hunting in the morning in October. I'm going to be on a pattern to identify a shooter deer and try to figure out what's coming and going from my property. I'm going to stay outside using my food plots and my binoculars to be in observation stands, which is like watching the edge of fields. Because this year in Illinois and across the Midwest, you're going to have the cornfields coming down. Right now, they're being combined. Earliest season ever. The crops are more mature. The beans have turned. In the fields that have late season, green beans, it's going to be on the south facing side of a field. One, it's going to get more water there, and it's going to be protected and shadowed, so it's not going to dry as fast. So if you're looking for an early season monster buck, those big deer, just like last year in early October, I hunted this last 15 yards of a downsloped south facing bean field. And I had the only green bean leaves in a couple hundred acres. And that's where every buck on the property on this whole 1,000 acres was. And so I'm going to concentrate on looking for those edges of those beans. I'm going to be on alfalfa. And you might find a mature deer on your food plots kind of cruising, because as these cornfields come down, the bucks are going to go back home where they want to be for the rest of the season. So these deer are living in ditches. The corn comes down, pushes them into the timber. Your neighbor goes and starts hunting mornings in October. They're going to come into the most secure place, and that's hopefully your farm. And don't freak out. EHD is something that we're facing every year. Don't freak out if your buck's not on camera. I have faith. I live on faith, and my faith is in the fact that these deer have found places that they're keying in on water and they're eating acorns, and I know that there's going to be a mature deer to chase. And when I find one to chase, and once I pin him down to a location that he wants to be, it's going to be real close to that full moon, that vampire walk that I like to talk about. I talk about on social media, on my Facebook page, on my Instagram all the time. You're going to have that full moon on October 17th. You're going to be looking for the 48 hours before the full moon. So October 15th, 16th, and 17th. If you're not hunting in the evenings. So right now, if you're like, what days should I take off and make sure I'm not date night? I think we're talking about like a Wednesday, a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday in October, and you're going to be looking at being out there at noon, 1 o'clock, hunting till dark in a location that a big deer that you know is hitting a scraper or on a trail cam or whatever, wherever that big deer is, those are the days you're going to kill them. It's just a vampire walk. They go by the moon, and that's the full moon. The full moon's on the 17th, so you need to be out there in those 3 evenings. Then you're going to be like on the dark side of the moon, that October 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st. I'm not looking for much movement because the dark side of the moon it really slows down the big buck activity. That's a good time that you can muddy the water and get ready for the kind of the pre-rut. You're going to have a new moon on October 30th. A new moon means a dark moon rising at like 6:33 in the morning. You're going to have some really good hunts. If you're going to hunt mornings, you're going to be looking at on that new moon, the Halloween, November 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to be coming off of a really dark moon. Hopefully, we're going to be looking at some cold fronts. Don't overlook the cold fronts in October, but another couple days is you're going to want to look at that. Halloween's going to be hot this year. November 1, 2, 3, 4, mornings and evenings, depending on the cold front. Watch for those winds to stabilize. Don't hunt the east winds, making sure you get the big westerly winds. Once the front's there, west, northwest, southwest, that means the front's stable. Be looking for those cold fronts when those leaves drop. It's going to be an early year for leaves to drop. They're already changing color. One big storm, they all come down. Then your wind's able to get up and out. When the leaves are on, that scent is controlled and tighter. You're going to have trouble unless those winds are higher. The higher the volume, 5, 7, 10 miles an hour, the better the hunting is going to be. Then you're going to find a full moon on that November 15th. It's actually going to be the beaver moon, the beaver phase moon. Fun fact, you're going to have that vampire walk. Maybe a couple of the hottest days on the planet Earth that you've ever hunted are going to be November 13th, 14th, and 15th. So if you're going to take some days off work, better be on the full moon, the 36, the 48, the 3 days before, somewhere in there in that full moon. you're going to kill a giant. So this isn't like a deer materializes out of nowhere. This is a big deer is in your area on your farm using a certain area, and you want to put that in your favor. Well, all of a sudden that full moon, that vampire walk is going to happen. November 13th, 14th, 15th. Those are my predictions. Go hunt those days. And you're still going to have good hunting days on the 17th, 18th, 19th, but they're not going to be as good as in front of the full moon. So, man, that's kind of my prediction for the year. Don't hunt mornings in October. November is going to be awesome up till about the 16th. The 16th is going to slow down just a little bit there before gun season. Then about gun season, about Thanksgiving, it's going to get really good again. Yeah, and then your late season stuff's going to all matter on cold fronts and food. What did you do for food this year? Man, I sure appreciate you guys letting me do this. So we're looking for support. We're looking for you guys to call in, keep going to the land line, we're going to call it, and that's where you go and ask questions. If you're looking for a piece of land in Illinois, I'm a broker with Herman Brothers Realty. It's what I do is I sell land and I set up farms and I do consults. And man, I just really appreciate Chris Zobeck and his wife. And this is a cool project. We're looking for support to continue to do cool things, and you guys make it happen. So thanks a lot, and it's just great.